Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report will join us in a few minutes. But first, some news from around Ohio and the sports scene in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski introduced new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees today. He was the tight ends coach, passing game coordinator last season. Stefanski also answered a question that was on everybody's mind.
We had a process with some really impressive candidates for this job, some smart people that we really enjoyed getting to know, but ultimately felt that Tommy was the right fit for this football team. As far as play calling, which I know you guys are going to ask, I'm going to call plays, and I reserve the right to change my mind.
Coach always has the right to change his mind. Tommy Rees made it clear Cleveland was where he wanted to be. Remember, he was a ball boy for the Browns back when he was a kid. His dad was also in the Browns front office.
I mean, that's a large reason why, right? I mean, growing up, my dad worked for however many NFL teams. For whatever reason, the Browns were kind of the one that stuck, probably because I was here, boots on the ground, working training camp. You know, those were probably the years I really started falling in love with football. And so when I think about my early development in the game, my early love for the game, so many of those memories were surrounded by either being here or watching the Browns on Sunday from home. And so, you know, it has come full circle. You know, I haven't really had the time to sit down and think about that, but you know, I know it's one, just, speaking with my brother, speaking with my dad, it is a pretty cool, story to, be able to say, okay, well, when you really fell in love with the game, it was in this building, it was watching these games, and now to be in the position I'm in is something I'm grateful for.
Well, the other thing about Tommy Rees, he will be involved in deciding who the quarterbacks actually are with the Browns. He was asked a couple of times today about Jaylen Milroe, whom he coached at Alabama. Rees was the offensive coordinator, Milroe his quarterback. Here's what he had to say today.
Listen, as a person, I have a lot of love for Jaylen, a lot of respect for Jaylen. Obviously, we went through an entire season together. And when you're the play caller and the quarterback, there's a great relationship there. But I'm really not going to expand much on anybody in the draft right now. And just know that I have a lot of love for Jaylen as the man he is, and wish him all the best.
So Rees wouldn't talk about Milroe, but you go back to the season where he was the offensive coordinator for Alabama. Milroe was his quarterback leading up to the Rose Bowl game that year where they played the Michigan Wolverines. Here is what Rees had to say about the development he had seen from Milroe from the beginning of the season to the bowl game for the Tide.
Jaylen's put in a lot of effort and work to improve his game. I think his overall control of the offense and what we're asking to do. I mean, each week, like I said, we're trying to stack things up on top of each other and add to what we do and enhance what we do. And it's probably week 8 or 9. I kind of pulled him aside during a practice and I say, hey, it's pretty cool where we're at now, where we were 8 weeks ago. And look at all the things now that we're asking you to do, all these different things that now you're in control of. And, for a young quarterback that, he hadn't played a lot of football coming into the season, that's part of the progression. And all the credit goes to Jaylen. I mean, the adversity he went through, the humility he handled it with, the ability to persevere and put his head down and work, to want to be better, to want to get better, to want the challenge of being the guy in front of the group, to want the challenge of we're going to continue to add to this thing and try to enhance your strengths. Again, all the credit goes to him. And so, to see him take control of the offense, to see him, as a passer develop, to see him be decisive in his ability to run the football, all those steps were, his effort, his time on task, his work to put in. And again, I talked about being proud of the entire group. That relationship with him, you don't get that experience very often.
Again, Tommy Rees, new offensive coordinator for the Browns, talking about Jaylen Milroe, who is one of the quarterbacks the Browns will undoubtedly be looking at in the upcoming draft. We'll have more on Rees. We'll hear more from Rees coming up in a few minutes with Casey Kinnamon and Spencer German. Let's turn our attention to the Cavs. Cavs trailed most of the night against the Rockets in Houston yesterday, but they did get things rolling in the fourth quarter. Darius Garland drives to the hoop, and it starts a nice run for the Cavs. This time, Garland playing some defense, knocks it free. He's going to take it inside, misses the layup. Sam Merrill trailing gets the putback. Cavs went on a 19-0 fourth quarter run to take the lead. This time, Donovan Mitchell kicks it out. The three is knocked down by Dean Wade. Cavs down 2, 4 seconds left. Garland for three. He gets fouled. Misses the three, but he gets fouled. After reviewing it, they decide not only was it a foul, but a flagrant foul. 3 free throws coming, plus the ball. Darius Garland's first free throw. No good. Remember, Cavs down 2 at this point. Darius Garland's second free throw. Not good. This is a guy that shoots better than 90% for the year. So the third of three free throws for Darius Garland. That one he knocks down, so it's a 1-point game. Cavs get the ball. They had some time, and Donovan Mitchell forces up a three. It's off the mark. Was a little rushed on that three, and the Cavs lose a tough one, 109-108 to the Houston Rockets in Houston. Kenny Atkinson, head coach of the Cavs, was asked what he told his point guard, Darius Garland, after the tough loss.
I told him, you've been carrying us all year. There's no, we got him in a, he put himself in a good position. One of the best free throw shooters in the league. It happens. But I love that guy. I love his effort. Hit a big three on the, without him, you lose by 10. So it to me, it doesn't, it's almost irrelevant. Guy's a great player. I'll take him in that situation every time.
And again, tough loss for the Cavs. 19-0 run to actually take the lead, and they lose by 1 in Houston. Well, the Guardians added another quality arm to their bullpen yesterday, agreeing to a reported 1-year, $7 million contract with Paul Sewald and a mutual option for 2026. Sewald is 34 years old, pitched for Arizona last year. Now he had a 4.31 ERA, 16 saves in 39 2/3 innings. The 16 saves makes 4 straight seasons with double-figure saves for Sewald, and he was 16-20 in save opportunities. Ironically, all 4 of the blown saves were in July when he was battling through neck and oblique issues that caused him to spend some time on the injured list. Closer look at the numbers showed he allowed 12 earned runs in July and 8 earned runs the rest of the season. He joins a Guardians bullpen that was a strength of the team last year and needs to be a strength of the team again this year. Here's a look at the Guardians of the pen for 2025. Manuel Clase had 47 saves in 50 opportunities with a .61 ERA. Cade Smith, a talented rookie last year, 191 ERA, 75 innings pitched. Hunter Gaddis, 1.57 ERA, 78 innings pitched. Hentges, Heron, and Sabrowski, all left-handed pitchers who were very effective. Clase's 47 of 50 in save opportunities. The rest of the bullpen, though, was 3 of 15 in save opportunities. There's why they went out and got Sewald. He gives Stephen Vogt, a veteran who can close out games when Clase needs a rest, and let the younger guys in the pen kind of get used to that pressure of the ninth inning and closing out of games. Sewald figures to make a really good bullpen even a little bit better. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. We are talking Browns and Tommy Rees with Casey Kinnamon. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Tommy Rees, introduced as the offensive coordinator today, was asked the people that shaped his beliefs on the offensive side of the football.
In 2016, I got the job in San Diego with the Chargers. I walked into that job thinking I had a pretty good grasp on football. I remember being completely blown away by the knowledge that the coaches had. And I would say that year, from just a schematic football standpoint, really changed the way I looked at the game. And we had, Mike McCoy was our head coach, Ken Wisenhunt was our coordinator, Nick Sirianni was our wideout coach, Shane Steichen was our quarterback coach. There was a great staff of people around me that I really leaned into and learned from. And then, you add the stops along the way. I mean, certainly, being under Coach Saban and learning how he ran his program and how you do things day to day, how he looked at the game as a defensive coach, like the perspective I was able to gain from him was something I will value my entire life. And then I spent 9 years with Brian Kelly as a player and as a coach. So obviously there's things along the way that I picked up with him offensively. So I've been fortunate to be around a lot of great coaches, but I would point to the year in San Diego as one that really transformed the way I looked at football.
Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. And Casey, everybody who seems to come in contact with Tommy Rees thinks he's a young, bright mind, future head coach type. It's interesting. Sirianni and Steichen are two kind of hot young coaches that he was right on that level with them.
Yeah, his trajectory has been something. You watch how he comes in the league, and as soon as he got here, you could just hear the way people were talking about him as if it wasn't going to be for long, and they were saying he's a tight ends coach. But when you looked at his resume, he looked to be overqualified just to be a tight ends coach. And then you hear the rumblings this offseason that if Bill Belichick doesn't get that job at UNC, that's going to be Tommy Rees. That just shows you the way he must interview incredibly well and when he comes in contact with people, like you said, they just speak glowingly of him. And I think the Browns realized if they wanted to keep him in the building, it was going to have to be with a promotion and an OC title. So, it's pretty astounding how fast he's rose up the ranks. And I won't be surprised if, we fast forward 5, 6, 7 years and he is a head coach somewhere in the league.
Yeah, and let's hope so, because if that happens, that means the Browns got things going on offense without question. All right, Rees was asked, and this one's interesting, best way to build an offense, most important thing about a quarterback.
Yeah, I think the best staffs, the best offenses find a way to cater to the people they have, right? You need to have a system that is diverse enough to be able to be flexible based on your personnel. You don't want to pigeonhole what you can and can't do based on your system. You want to be flexible to, let's go find the best quarterback we can and let's make sure that he's comfortable in the system.
Tommy, when you speak of that quarterback, whoever it is, what's maybe the one biggest trait you need to see that tells you that's the quarterback for me? What is there a specific trait that's like number one?
Yeah, at the end of the day, the quarterback's job is to solve problems. You're going to be tasked 60, 70, 80 times a game to make a decision in a critical moment. And so I've always started with the ability to make quick decisions and make the right decisions. So if you said one thing over the other, I want a decision maker at that position. So
Casey, I like hearing that, because that means he's going to give him the answers to solving problems. If solving problems is what he wants, he better give him the answers to solve the problem. And I think if you want to cram into a nutshell the issues the Browns offense had, there were no answers to the problems they were facing each and every week.
Yeah, and that's a good insight to how he sees the game as well. And he played quarterback at Notre Dame. This is someone who values a high-level problem solver in the moment. With everything moving around you, you got to be able to decipher all this information before you even get to the line to snap the ball, and then it, increases tenfold as soon as that ball snaps. So you have to have answers in place, just for whatever circumstance you may face, whatever defense you may see, a front, a blitz, all those things are all just variables that are going through your head, and you have to filter them out in nanoseconds and perform, So I think that it is a characteristic you need to have in a quarterback, and someone that you can trust to be on the field and lead your team to victory is someone who can decipher all that and find the answer very quickly.
So Kevin Stefanski also announced at the beginning of the press conference that, and we heard it, that he will call plays. Your thoughts?
Well, that was one of the considerations I was having in my head when they were interviewing people. Is someone like Clint Kubiak going to come and be comfortable taking a back step and not calling plays? So, who are the people they were interviewing? They might look at a candidate more favorably if they would be willing to just be the guy who wrangles all the ideas, gets all the concepts, leads all the meetings and stuff, while Kevin still does the sequencing on game days and calls plays. And they kind of found that with Rees. But you kind of, when Stefanski was asked about it, well, he wasn't even asked about it. He gave up that information up front that he'd be calling plays, but he retained the right to change his mind if he saw fit. I think that's just that kind of leftovers from all the questions he had to answer with Ken Dorsey last year, all offseason. So he kind of got ahead of that. But I'm not surprised. We kind of felt the winds going this way, that you just heard the players in their exit interviews and how they were speaking about wanting to kind of lean back into Stefanski's wheelhouse. And with that comes the sequencing and calling of plays.
The other thing is both he and Andrew Berry need to turn this around. And if I'm Kevin Stefanski, it's why I got the job. So, yeah, I'm going back to calling plays. And I know some fans don't like that. But if you take a step back, it makes sense. If my rear end is on the line, I want to have control of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. If your job was on the line, you'd be the one to make the calls, kind of concerning your own future. So it's not surprising, and it's not something we haven't seen him do before. I was actually surprised when he gave up play calling last year at the time in which he did it. You could see that he wanted to get back in control of things and have more of a say in how everything goes down to down.
So this is from ESPN.com. 3 issues the Browns offense must address this offseason. Number one, we all know this. They have to find a solution at quarterback. Collectively, Browns quarterbacks struggled with decision-making. Look at that. 23 interceptions, most in the NFL. Browns are expected to consider options in free agency in the draft for a quarterback room that Berry acknowledged will look much different in 2025. Number 2, rebuild the offensive line. Quarterback situation was unstable all season. Offensive line, typically a strength, regressed. Cleveland struggled to run the ball, 29th in yards per game at 94.6, 22nd in yards before contact, which is 2.43, which means they're getting no push. And number 3, get more dynamic at the skill positions. Jerry Jeudy had a breakout season, recorded his first 1,000-yard season, was named to the Pro Bowl. David Njoku battled multiple injuries, missed 6 games. Has shown he can be a Pro Bowler, but he has to be healthy. I agree with all those. The question I'm wondering with you, the offensive line, how much do they improve simply by going and doing something that they're more used to, that wide zone that you heard both Conklin and Bitonio say they wanted to get back to it? I think that helps. They probably have to do a little bit more than just go back to that system.
No, absolutely. But it does start there. It starts with whatever talent you bring in has to be married to the scheme that you're going to run. And those players like Jack Conklin were brought here to run the wide zone. That's the reason they targeted him specifically. And I think Bitonio, especially early in his career, was more scheme agnostic. He could have done a pin pull scheme, just as well as he could do the wide zone stuff, being an athlete, but being kind of like a brute up front, But if you're going to go back to that, if you're going to go back to running in space and creating these cutback lanes and getting out and really blocking in space, you want to have more athletic people, So if you're going to do that, all of your efforts need to be geared towards that, even with prospects, free agency. Obviously you got who you have in-house, and you kind of have to tailor to what you have. But at the same time, you're going to keep adding to that. Because even if you go in the next season and you're looking at Jack Conklin and DeJuan Jones, you better have some capable backups. Both those guys have significant injury histories at this point, and the guys that you get to back up have to be able to run that scheme as well. So I do think it plays a large part as the scheme, but you also have to look at personnel. You got to get fresh legs in there. Zach Zinter last year, we barely got to see him before he went out with injury. He was someone they might want to count on for the future, but they're going to have to keep adding to that. And if you look at this upcoming draft, there's tons of interior talent, and there's several candidates of tackles that are projected to be guards. But I believe, just given where this team is at, I would bring them in and let them fail at tackle before I push them inward, just to see what you have.
The other one, get more dynamic at the skill positions. I couldn't agree more. Jeudy is a guy that can make some plays, but I don't know that you have anybody that defenses go, we can't let him get the ball. You need somebody like that.
Yeah, you can't quit adding that position. You need playmakers. And had we seen more out of Cedric Tillman, maybe it'd feel a little different. But he went out with 6 games to go with the concussion, wasn't able to return. There were flashes while he was in of things that he could become. Because they started Jameis, we got to see what Judy could be. So you need that, but you need to keep adding to that. You need another bigger body stretch type guy that can really stress defenses up top. So yeah, you can't stop. You got to keep adding playmakers. Look at this league. Look around. The most successful offenses, the most explosive offenses, have 2 number ones. Like that's the recipe on the outside. Now it's hard to pay both guys at the same time, so they kind of have to be on different spectrums. As you get one, on a rookie contract where you still have a vet who's in that space. But that's the end game here. Is you got to get more playmakers. You got to be able to stretch the field and just threaten defenses on all 3 levels.
And we'll talk a little bit about some of the running backs you like in the Senior Bowl in a minute, but you got to get a running back who can do that as well. You need a running game kind of overhauled. This is from NFL Defensive Player of the Year finalists, and among them, Myles Garrett. So you see Zach Braun of the Eagles, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Patrick Surtain, and T.J. Watt. Surtain won the Pro Football Writers one, so it'll be interesting to see. Myles Garrett had a great year, but a 3-win team, that's an uphill fight to win an award such as that.
Yeah, the first thing that pops off to me is you look at that and you got 3 guys from the AFC North on that short list. That just shows you how brutal it is, especially with up front and how they get after quarterbacks. But if you kind of look at that list, and no one really ran away with anything this year, Myles, from a talent perspective, is always going to belong on that list with the very best tip of the spear of the league on defense. But when no one runs away with it, we saw this in 2019 when Stephon Gilmore won the Defensive Player of the Year. If no one runs away with the sack totals, it could very well go to a defensive back. And this year it looks like it's going to be Patrick Surtain. So that'd be my leader in the clubhouse just because no one ran away with it.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and Barking Browns podcast, and I. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon. I'm not seeing the Hunter appeal. He played for Colorado just like Shedeur did. Who did they really play defensively? Who did he really cover as a corner? It looks to me like you're only as good as the competition you play. He dominated bad competition. I'm just not feeling it. I want somebody from a proven conference that goes against real competition week in and week out. Maybe I'm missing something. I think the guy also has an injury history, and he's a smallish corner, so that scares me. I say beef up the pass rush. Our secondary is going to look a whole lot better if you got 2 guys like Myles Garrett running around and they're chasing people. You all have a good day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Yeah, Casey, I get the thought. I'm Abdul Carter intrigues me, but Hunter's an athlete. I do share the concern. He's a little slight of frame, and I would be concerned relative to injuries, but the athleticism's off the charts. Ball skills are ridiculously good.
Yeah, and this has been known since he was in high school. He was the #1 recruit coming out of high school before, he went to Jackson State, then went with Dion to Colorado. But you can only play who's on your schedule, so I really can't fault him for that. He dominated against who he dominated against. We've seen this in the past with several other prospects. My concern with him is, are you the best at either of your positions? If I had to take one wide receiver, I would probably take Tet McMillan over Hunter. If I had to take one corner, I would probably take Will Johnson over Hunter. And how does a team see his role being in the league? Because if I'm him, I want to play wide receiver. because the 20th wide receiver paid in the league makes as much as the 5th best corner. There's a gap there. And does a team feel confident that he can go both ways? And if so, what's the ratio? Is he going to play a third of the defensive snaps and half it off? It just gets weird. So it becomes, you have to have a plan for a player like that. And the player then has to buy into said plan, to get the most out of him. So I just kind of don't know where he's at. When I look at his coverage abilities, I see him as a zone corner. If you're Cleveland, how much zone do you plan on running to feature someone like him when you have a Denzel Ward on the outside and a Martin Emerson who can play press man? So there's a lot of moving parts there. I know a lot of people view him as generational, and if the Browns view him as generational, they'd be foolish to pass him up. I just don't know if I see that in that specific prospect right now.
Yeah, and I get your concern. A lot of times, guys get caught in between. Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Well, it's even more so. Is he a really good corner? Is he a really good wide receiver? All things that will be answered during the combine and the draft process. Along those lines, Titans president of football operations, remember, Titans have the #1 overall pick, Chad Brinker said Tennessee would not pass on a, quote, generational type player. Here's Adam Schefter's interpretation of that.
We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft. If you had to guess, not holding your feet to the fire per se, but if you had to guess, who do you think that generational talent might be, or do you have any intimations as to which way the Titans would be going?
The defensive lineman from Penn State or the wide receiver cornerback from Colorado. That quote told me that they are not locked in to take a quarterback at 1.
Casey, we know this is the time where they're going to say everything. They're also going to tell you how much they think Cam Ward is going to be a franchise quarterback. Shedeur too. So you're going to hear all kinds of stuff like that. But it is kind of interesting that they have come out and said we won't pass on a generational talent.
Yeah, it's smokescreen season. Everybody get your guards up, get ready. There's going to be a lot of stuff to filter through. Some teams might hear that and say, oh, they're not taking a quarterback. Wonder if they'd be interested in this haul if they're interested in a quarterback. So there's just a lot of, it's like a game of poker. No one's going to tell her. And they didn't come out and say who they thought the generational talent was. You can hear the speculation, which I agree. If you're thinking generational, you're looking at this draft position-wise, you're thinking Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if you believe he can be that two-way difference maker. And outside of that, there's a lot of, just one tier down in certain specific positions that people might value to go up that high, but quarterback's always the one that gets pushed up. It's always the one people trade up for. People very rarely ever trade up for a position player in the top 5. They're always looking for quarterback. So if they're letting that be out there and teams don't think they're talking about a quarterback, then they're going to start fielding offers, and them getting that out there just starts that process earlier so they can try to get the best deal possible. All
right. So the Commanders quarterback, Jaden Daniels, has played really well without question. At an extremely high level. Now, Daniels has talked about using VR every morning to help simulate live reps that include moving in the pocket, throwing into tight windows. The speed of his VR simulation is set to the highest possible setting. Moves faster within VR than actual human beings. Once you get it out there, everything slows down. I know this is coming. I've seen it before, and it moved more than 20 times faster in VR. So that's interesting. Browns' new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, was asked about VR to help train quarterbacks.
Yeah, we do have VR as part of our it's part of the things that are available to our players. Every individual is different on how well they take to those things. Obviously, Jaden's talked about it from his time at LSU even. So I'm very familiar with that. I've used it with quarterbacks in the past. We do have the ability to use that. Again, some of that is on individual basis on how they learn. But part of our job as coaches is to be able to reach a lot of different players that learn a lot of different ways. So if VR is a tool that helps us maximize our players' ability, then that's one that we'll have at our disposal.
And he also said that they used it both at Alabama and Notre Dame. So familiar with it. It's just kind of interesting that Jaden Daniels kind of swears by it.
Yeah, and it seems to have sped up his learning curve. I think that's one thing to take notice of, because you look at his poise for a rookie, and it's you don't see anything like it. If you're picking quarterbacks that you wouldn't want to have the ball in the fourth quarter of a game to win a game, Jaden Daniels' name will be on that list. because it looks calm. The chaos doesn't get to him. And for being a rookie, that's super impressive, but you have to listen to the way he trains. He's kind of letting you know that's one of his secrets. Now that might not work for everyone, but if you're a kid who grew up in the video game age and that's how you grew up kind of learning and assimilating things, and then you can get that exposure to something like VR and it works for you, by all means, you should do it. It doesn't mean it'll work for every player, but I would at least try it with every player, especially incoming rookies, because we always talk about that learning curve and how fast the game moves for them, and you're not seeing that with Jaden Daniels, and you really haven't seen that all season long. We played him early in the season, and he already looked like game was kind of moving slow for him then. So it's definitely a tool that I would lean on, and if a player took to it, I would just keep feeding him more information until you can max that thing out, because he's talking about these guys look slow now. That's what you want to hear out of your quarterback.
Yeah, there are no bad ideas relative to developing a quarterback when you are in that building trying to do it for the Browns. All right, before we go to break, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Senior Bowl and some free agency, is there a veteran quarterback or a trade target or a free agent that makes the most sense to you? We've heard Geno Smith, we've heard Derek Carr, you hear Kirk Cousins. Is there somebody that you think, let's get him in here and let whomever we draft develop?
See, that's the thing. As I think people need to wrap their mind around the fact that it's not going to be a sexy name. There's going to be these guys out there, and you have to understand they're not just getting someone just to get someone to be a placeholder for whoever they draft, because this regime has to win now. So whoever they bring in, they view as someone they can win with, because if not, what are we doing here? They can't have another losing season like that. So I'm not 100% sure who they're targeting right now. You're hearing, Danny Dimes. You're going to hear the Kirk Cousins on the vet minimum after he forces his way out of Atlanta. I've heard Derek Carr's name bandied about, Geno Smith, but these are the names we're going to need to wrap our heads around, because it's going to be a player like this. If I was going to trade for someone, if I'm looking around the league for someone with what I believe genuine upside that could help, I would look at Malik Willis in Green Bay, who spent a year in LaFleur's system, and he's on a younger deal, from where they traded for him from the Titans, and I would try to entice them if I could get him for a day 3 pick and bring that kid in my building, because I think he has starting level caliber, and he's still ascending. And you saw the information he was able to take in Green Bay, and he looked good every time we seen him on the field. So that'd be a player I'd be interested in trading for if I could get him for a day 3 pick.
I'm intrigued by Derek Carr. I have always thought, if you get him, I think his skill set would match what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. So, again, we'll see. Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
In my honest opinion, I don't think Nick Chubb can do another 2 or 3 years at the running back position just because of age and also injuries. You never want to leave or get rid of your star running back who's been your key to your success. But I think it's time that we find another young running back that can carry the load that Nick Chubb has, or even give it to multiple guys so that way that one guy won't get hurt throughout the coming years. And you also create depth at the position. So, yeah, go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I kind of think organizationally they've been looking to get to running back by committee, and that's what's coming, I think.
Yeah, and for years you looked around the league, and that's kind of what was winning. And we were a rare scenario because we had Nick Chubb, and there's a few other pockets. But you saw last year the return of the
Hmm.
workhorse back, and it was mostly veterans who went to a new team like Josh Jacobs or Saquon, or you just started to see it. Even Joe Mixon down in Houston, So if they view someone they could trade and kind of get in that role, maybe. I don't see that specific person out there. If I were to try to trade for someone nearing the end of a rookie contract, I'd look at Tyler Algier in Atlanta. I think they're not going to move on from him because they're going to pay Bijan Robinson when his contract's ready. So that'd be someone I would look at. But it's those guys aren't growing on trees. So yeah, they're going to be looking for young running backs. But luckily for them, this is the draft to do it. There's going to be a plethora of young running backs to choose from, and there are several that fit that workhorse mentality.
So this is from NFL.com. Rees Jones-Drew, former NFL running back. Team fits for running backs that are set to become free agents. And they have Rico Dowdell as a fit for the Browns. Became just one of 16 players this season to top 1,000 yards rushing. Dowdell won't wow you, but he's the type that will wear defenses down from weeks 13 to 18, earned 186 yards after forcing a missed tackle, second most in the NFL during that span. He had 17 runs of at least 10 yards, tied for third most in next-gen stats. That's the kind of guy that the Browns need. I'm not sure I buy, Rico Dowdell, but give me the 17 runs of 10 yards or more, and I like that.
Yeah, and that's what we got used to with Chubb is you could be explosive in the running game, So you've seen how he's ripping it off, and he wasn't getting full-time reps in Dallas. It took him a while to kind of break through. They were still trying to start Zeke at the beginning of the year, So he really didn't come on until the second half, and you saw what was capable. But it's about catching lightning in a bottle. And, from the outside looking in, a lot of people thought Rico Dowdle should have been the starting back to start the year. And for whatever reason, the Cowboys didn't see it. So there could be value there. But that's just it. When you're looking at running back, you're looking, here for a good time, not a long time. They don't really last too long. So you got to get them while they're in their prime. So a player like him might have a little bit of a market after you saw all the players that moved in running back last year and actually had some success, where in years past that was super devalued. As soon as you were 28, 29, they would move on. So right now, if Rico Dowdle needs to strike while the iron's hot, and his name's kind of out there.
All right. You wrote an article, 4 Senior Bowl running backs that the Browns should be, at least they should be on their radar. Number 4, Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. He had a great junior year, not as great this year, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Jarquez Hunter from Auburn. Interesting to see what becomes of him. Damian Martinez from Miami. And then number 1, you have Cam Scatabo, who at Arizona State played really well in their college football playoff game. A bigger body guy. Looked like he could catch the ball a little bit in that college football playoff as well. When you look at those, who intrigues you the most?
Well, I think Ollie Gordon has the most to gain at the Senior Bowl just because he had that gigantic sophomore season. If he had been able to come out, he had probably been the second running back taken. He goes back for his junior year, has a precipitous fall off. I mean, he still got 946 rushing yards, but it wasn't as explosive as it was. He looked a little heavier. There's some other factors. So if he comes into Mobile in tip-top shape and can really remind scouts of that, that 2023 version, he could stand to, kind of put him back himself at least at the end of day 2. But if you're looking at it, I mean, it's Scatabo, he's so much fun. Like when I watch him, it's like he runs like someone just stole his bicycle. He runs so angrily. But you kind of touched on it, and I really believe that entering the league, he is a very dangerous, passing back out of the backfield. Like he's a guy that I want on third downs because of his ability to be versatile in the passing game. He can go out wide and run slants. He can do the Texas stuff from the inside. You can put him in the slot, and he's dangerous with the ball in his hands, especially in space when you get him down the field. A lot of the stuff he did as a pure running back, just running the football. I don't know if he'll get away with all that in the NFL because he was really just trucking guys and just getting yards after contact, and that has a shorter shelf life than what he can do as a passing attack back. And I also think that he's someone that in pass protection, that's where a lot of these rookies fall off, is they come in at pass protection and they don't know what they're looking at. He excels at pass protection. In fact, I need him to kind of tone it down. He's out there trying to land kill shots on linebackers coming in, and at the next level, that might get you hurt. They'll see you dip your head, try to go for that, and they'll kind of go around you. But I like his skill set, and I think if you think of 2020 Kareem Hunt, I think that's what Scatterbo could be entering the league. He's kind of that exact same mold. Gets you short yardage, kind of runs frenetically, almost out of control, and needs the contact to settle down. But it's what he can do in the passing game that really excites me.
All right, same thing. You wrote 4 tight ends that should be on the Browns' radar from the Senior Bowl as well. Elijah Aroro from Miami is number 4. Number 3 from LSU, Mason Taylor. Number 2 guy we saw against Ohio State, college football playoff, Gunnar Helm. And number 1 from Bowling Green, Harold Fannin Jr., who is a local kid. He's from Northeast Ohio area. Who intrigues you of that group?
Well, Fannin Jr., but he's different than everyone else. He's the wild card. He's the wild card of this entire tight end class. He's not going to be viewed as a first rounder, like Colson, or if you look at Tyler Warren, but it's what he can do as a mismatch nightmare. You can literally line that kid up anywhere. You can put him in the backfield next to the quarterback. You can use him as an H motion. You can put him as a big slot. Like, you can just be, it would really, if you have a creative offensive coordinator, it just kind of opens up a whole new world with a player like that, especially if you think you're going to go back into Kevin Stefanski's wheelhouse and run more 12 personnel. You already have your inline tight end in David Njoku, so you wouldn't be asking Fannin to do that kind of stuff. He would be that move piece to trying to create mismatches. And I just think that, he's at 6'3", 230. There's going to be some limitations as a blocker, especially early in his career. But we're also talking about someone who won't be 21 until September. He's still super young, has a lot to grow into, but he can be very versatile. And there's a template for a player like him. If you look around a league like Isaiah Likely or former Washington Commander Jordan Reed, that type of player can thrive if you have the right scenario. And I think with David Njoku, if you pair him with someone like Fannin, I think it really gives your offense a whole new dimension, in the screen game, the stuff you could do up the seams with him, because he has movement skills like a receiver, and he has great concentration, at the catch point and all kinds of traffic. He gives you more as a receiver. But if you're trying to lean back and you're trying to go the 2-12 inline personnel type thing, where you're just trying to go jumbo and confuse defenses, then you look at someone like Gunnar Helm. He's ready to play right now. Like that is a prototypical tight end. That's someone that you look at and he's out the box, and he's going to be ready to contribute early into his rookie contract and be an impact player, kind of a security blanket type player for a quarterback. So it just depends on what flavor you're looking for. But this tight end class is pretty exciting for me.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you read him. Orange and Brown Report. He also hosts the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Spencer German straight ahead. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. This is Danielle from Manaway. I have a question for you. What do you think about Travis Hunter from Colorado? I think he could be a good addition for the Browns. Thanks, Dave. Woof, woof. Go Brownies.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Cleveland Browns on SI and the Lockdown Browns podcast. Spencer, I kind of like Hunter. The one thing, we made the point earlier, with a player like Hunter, you have to have a plan. So he does. It's not like you can throw him in and say, go do everything. You got to identify what you want him to do and then add to that.
Yeah, and I do think what's kind of hard with Travis Hunter is the two positions that he most likely is going to play aren't necessarily the top pressing needs for the Browns right now. I mean, like I think maybe corner to an extent would make sense. I honestly think he ends up maybe playing more corner at the NFL level. I could be wrong about that once you get through sort of this pre-draft process, but like he feels like that's more so like where he's going to fit. And like I think right now the Browns obviously still have Denzel Ward as a top guy in this league right now. You have MJ Emerson, who I know took a step back this year, but I envision that I feel like they still feel very highly about his ability and feel he's going to get back sort of on track in 2025. So I don't know that. I know Andrew Berry always drafts a corner, but I don't know that it's so pressing that you do it with the number 2 overall pick, even if he is, best player available at that time. So I just think that kind of complicates things because on the flip side too, like wide receiver I think is a need for the Browns, but because of the emergence of Jerry Jeudy, it feels like they just need to find a solid number 2 to kind of complement him. And maybe that will be Travis Hunter. Maybe they would feel really good about that as a sort of dynamic duo at the receiver position. But yeah, I think when I look or think about the team needs, I don't know that I put Travis Hunter at the top of the list just based off of the positions that he's likely to play at the NFL, even though I think he's going to be a great player at the next level.
All right, so Browns' new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, was asked a number of times about Jaylen Milroe, guy that he coached at Alabama when he was offensive coordinator there before coming to the Browns. Didn't want to answer anything specific about Milroe today. But he had plenty to say about Milroe leading up to the Rose Bowl when he was coaching them, when he was coaching at Alabama against Michigan. Here's what he had to say about Milroe.
Jaylen's probably got a little bit more personality than I do, I would think. I think I have a unique perspective of playing the position and going through some hardships that I'm able to relate to. But, Jaylen, his mental toughness is greater than mine ever was. And, we can have light moments where I can, if he's amped up, I can try to settle him down by, cracking a joke, and I can be dry and all that and make him laugh. But our relationship has grown tremendously over the last 11 months. And like I said, he's a joy to coach, man. I mean, his ability to block everything out, be centered and focused on what he's trying to accomplish, wanting to be better, the humility that it takes to accept those challenges. He's really a special kid. He really is. And I'm fortunate to be around him every single day.
Again, Spencer, that doesn't mean anything, but it does give you some insight into what he sees as strengths of Jaylen Milroe. I know you wrote an article about it. Take us through the article where you kind of look at him as an intriguing fit for Tommy Rees.
Yeah, I was mostly trying to connect the dots on what you're alluding to, and obviously you had the clip there. Their time together at Alabama and how Milroe's numbers were better under Tommy Rees in 2023 than they were this past year in what was his redshirt junior season at Alabama. So I think that's notable. I think obviously, the relationship that they have, Tommy's obviously going to be able to bring some and provide some insight into the person that he is and how composed he can be as a quarterback at the next level. And I think that's kind of the key component here is like, as they evaluate these guys, it's always nice to know somebody who has like an intricate relationship with somebody. So, I was kind of trying to analyze that and see what that maybe means for the Browns. What I find maybe the reason I think there's a link there, though, beyond just the relationship between Rees and Milroe, is the fact that if the Browns don't want to take a quarterback at 2, or they don't feel inclined to take one of these top guys in Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, I do think there are some options further down the board. A Quinn Ewers, a Jaylen Milroe, a Will Howard, who I think's now gotten into the conversation with how he played in the college football playoff. That could make some sense for them. And my biggest thing is just like the value on those guys in maybe the second or third round is better than reaching on a guy that you think has maybe some flaws that you're worried about being a franchise guy if you were to take him at 2. So if you were to take Jaylen Milroe like in the third round or something, I get there's some issues there. I don't think he's particularly a great thrower of the football. Maybe that's something that working with Tommy Rees again, they could sort of, coach him out of and get him better at. And I do leave some room for growth at the next level as well. Like part of being a coach in the NFL is you're able to coach players up and help them improve. So there is some room and some runway, I think, to appreciate that maybe Jaylen can get better in certain phases of his game. His athleticism, though, is off the charts. And I do think that's maybe the one thing that you could tap into, especially if you're taking him as like a third rounder, where it's like, well, hey, we got this really freakishly athletic quarterback. If we can hone in some of these other skills from, being a pocket passer and how he throws the ball and pushing the ball down the field, maybe that there's something viable there from a quarterback standpoint. But I don't know that I think he's going to be like the best of this class or anything. I think there's some potential there. And I do think the connection between him and Tommy Rees is something that shouldn't be ignored, because they will lean on him during the draft process if they end up waiting on a quarterback to sort of make a decision on whether or not they want to take a chance on him.
Yeah, and if they decide that, that's fine, because Tommy Rees has information that nobody.
Yeah,
he went through an entire season as his offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. He knows what he does well, what he needs to work on. When he starts doing this, it's because of this. Those are things that are invaluable. You did mention Will Howard. Take me through the article you wrote. Do you think the Browns should consider him?
Yeah, so obviously Will Howard makes sense from a lot of different angles. One of them being that he played down the street down I-71 in Columbus this past year, and is now an Ohio State legend because he leads the program to a national championship in just his 1 year there. So it's interesting because I kind of put Milroe and Howard going into probably like midway through the season. I would have had them like at the same place. Like, yeah, they're probably these quarterbacks that need some work at the next level. But I think Howard, aside from Ryan Day, I think the playoff did the most for Ryan Day. But I think Will Howard's probably second on that list in terms of players that benefited from it, because man, like he showed some real promise as a pocket passer. He showed an ability to push the ball down the field accurately. He showed an ability, and we saw it on Monday night in the Notre Dame game and in the championship game, with pressure bearing down on him to sort of stand in and still deliver the ball on target to a certain spot. And I think that last call that sort of cemented the win for them on Monday night, where he throws it up to Jeremiah Smith. I mean, gutsy call from Chip Kelly to begin with, but a gutsy throw by Will Howard with the game on the line to take a deep shot like that. And he put it on the money with a 7-man pressure coming down, like right down Broadway towards him. So I think he also showed an ability to run the football. I think the one thing that we knew about Will Howard before the playoff was that he has a lot of poise. He doesn't get rattled very much, and I think that's something Ohio State valued in bringing him in the first place. And so I think that will translate very well to the NFL level. I think there are still some questions about like him as a passer, but if he can kind of take the momentum he built during the playoff and add to it during the Senior Bowl next week, the Combine coming up in February, his pro day, I think that momentum could lead to him being like solidly a day 2 pick. And he falls then in line with, I think, like similar to the conversation we had with Jaylen Milroe, as a guy that if the Browns decide we don't want to take a quarterback at number 2, we just think it's too risky and we don't love these guys, then I think Will Howard very much becomes a guy that's in play for you on one of those days, and gives you somebody you can take probably to back up a veteran, and you just kind of take a chance and see if he can be anything at the next level, and if maybe your coaching helps him become something that other teams maybe don't think he can be. So, I think those two are sort of in the same box for me of players that have some potential that I'm intrigued by, but I still need to see more.
Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Browns on SI, and the Locked On Browns podcast. And Seventh Tide, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Full Court Action is a half-hour devoted exclusively to men's and women's basketball from across the Mid-American Conference. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Bacon. Join me at 6:30 Tuesday nights, and we'll meet the coaches and players from the Mid-American Conference who are making an impact in basketball. Full Court Action will spotlight the top plays and performances from all across the Mid-American Conference, with some historical action as well. Catch Full Court Action Tuesday nights at 6:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Cleveland Browns on SI, and the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Mike from Wellston with an outside-the-box question. Let's say the love affair between Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders comes to fruition, and Deion is named coach of the Cowboys. Deion has numerous times mentioned that he would be involved actively with Shadur's draft positioning if he's selected by a team that Deion does not approve of. What do you think the league would do if the coach of the Dallas Cowboys had his son pull an Eli Manning on the Cleveland Browns if the Browns happen to draft him? Just curious. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Spencer, I get the question. I don't think Deion's going to be the coach of the Cowboys. But I don't think the league would be able to do much, to be honest with you, because it wouldn't directly be Deion. It would be Shadur doing it or Shadur's agent under the direction of Deion. And obviously, we're having some issues with. There we go.
I think we're good. Sorry. Yeah, I think using the example that the caller brings up there, I think you just go back to 2004, the year Eli Manning sort of pulled the same thing, and that's the reference point everybody points to. I don't think the league would do anything. There's not really anything they can do. There's no rule against a player sort of urging or sort of forcing his way to a certain situation. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, the Deion to the Cowboys story, it was fun. I don't necessarily, like you, Dave, I don't think that's going to happen, but it is kind of fun to think about, like him reuniting with Jerry Jones and what he would do there. And I'm sure some of the reporting on him being at least intrigued by it is true, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, whether or not he played for the Browns though is kind of the big, gray cloud hanging over that entire situation, right? Like if the Browns, because I tend to think that Shador is the better fit for the Browns offense and the way they're going to go back to this, Kevin Stefanski system. I think he's the better fit between him and Cam Ward of the two. But again, if there's the risk of, is he even going to play for you? What's he going to sort of say? I do think they'll make that known before the draft, or at least privately, so the Browns will know ahead of time. But like, I don't know, like if you're the Browns, like you can't take that risk, I don't think. And that's another layer to the entire quarterback conversation for this team into whether or not they should take 1 to 2 or not. Because if that's the guy that's still left at 2 and there's no guarantee he's going to play for you, I don't know if that's something that the Browns can afford to sort of get into or, have to deal with.
No, absolutely not. If they're picking at 2, you've got to find a Myles Garrett or a Denzel Ward. Garrett was 1, Ward was 4. You need that kind of player at 2. And that kind of leads me to my next thing. And I agree with you, but take us through the article. Browns can't get desperate with that second pick.
Yeah, and that centers around the quarterback conversation. I understand where fans are frustrated with the way the Deshaun Watson thing played out. I think everybody is, how this team looked with Deshaun Watson. Like it's been a disaster, and that's true. But they can't try to solve that problem and make it go away by then making a drastic decision that could set the organization back even more years. And I understand, the easy example that everyone's pointing to is you look at the Washington Commanders right now, getting ready to play in the NFC Championship game this weekend, and they're all like, well, hey, they did it. They drafted a quarterback at number 2, and look how quickly they turned the organization around. But the question isn't should they draft a quarterback at 2 in that instance? The question is there a quarterback as good as Jayden Daniels worth drafting at number 2? And I don't know that in this class that's the case. So the idea of, especially that article I wrote was, I understand where fans really are pushing for, well, you might as well just do it. There's nothing to lose. You got to find this quarterback. You got to get this position right. Like, take a chance. But like, if they guess wrong or they pick wrong and they get desperate and they just make that pick because they're worried about their job security or whatever, again, that could set the organization back at that position and beyond even further. So you can't, like, you're going to have to take a risk to get out of this situation, because no matter who you bring in, I think you're doing that. Whether it's Kirk Cousins as a nearly 40-year-old, whether it's Sam Darnold as kind of this reclamation project, or Daniel Jones or whatever it might be, you're going to have to take a little bit of a risk. But it's about weighing like how big of a risk you want to take. And if you don't like either of these quarterbacks and you don't think they're going to fit what you do, you can't just take one to take one. Because that to me is like a risk that's maybe just too much. If you get it wrong, then you got bigger problems that extend beyond 2025, 2026, maybe even 2027.
Well, I'll take it even a step further. If Andrew Berry gets it wrong at 2, there's going to be somebody else picking high in the draft next year, I believe.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
I agree.
And you got to get 2 right. And the question is there a quarterback that you feel can be your quarterback for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
And if not, you don't take him at 2.
Yeah. Well, and real quick to add to that, I think you're right about Barry. Like, their job statuses are on the line. And you also can't pick a quarterback just because that's the case either. Like, you can't just be like, well, if we don't pick a quarterback and get this right, like, our jobs are, no, you still have to think about, like, if what am I trying to accomplish this year? What do I need to do to get this team better? And I think, like, a lot of this centers around, like, what's the goal for next year? And from the outside looking in, it feels like the goal just needs to be steady the waters here, get this team back into playoff contention. And if you do that, I think that sort of gets everybody buying back into this regime. And then you can start thinking about, like, taking the next big swing at a quarterback and seeing if you can get that position right finally.
I'm with you. Spencer German, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Spencer German, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fan, the Browns on SI. He also hosts the Locked On Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.